The founder's son poured wine on me in front of hundreds of powerful people, and in that instant, the room decided I was meant to swallow it quietly. "Careful," Blake Kessler drawled, lifting his glass just enough for the cameras to catch the gesture. "These events can be overwhelming for newcomers." I met his smile without returning it. "I'm not new." A few heads turned. That wasn't the reaction he expected. He glanced at my name tag, then laughed, too loudly. "Claire Hart? Right. The fund?" His eyes flicked past me, as if searching for someone more important. "You must feel lucky to be here." "I'm here to close," I replied. The word hung there. Blake's smile tightened. He tipped his glass. The wine spilled slowly, deliberately, staining the front of my dress. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the circle around us. Then laughter, uneven, nervous, relieved it wasn't aimed at them. Flashes popped. Someone whispered my name like it was a warning. Blake stepped back, palms open. "Wow." That was clumsy. His grin widened. "You blend in so easily." No one moved. No one intervened. The silence pressed in, heavy with expectation. I looked down at the dark red spreading across the fabric, then back up at him. "You're finished," a beat. Confusion flickered across his face. "Relax," he muttered. "It's just wine." I reached for a napkin, dabbed once, then let my hand fall. "No," I said quietly. "It isn't." Behind him, conversations stalled. People watched, waiting for the part where I apologized, laughed it off, or disappeared. That was how this usually went. "Claire," Nina murmured at my shoulder. She wasn't looking at me. She was watching the exits, the board members, the phones already coming out. "Do you want to step outside?" I shook my head. "Not yet," Blake scoffed. "You should go change. We'll handle things from here." I didn't answer him. I unlocked my phone instead, scrolled past unread messages, and opened the document I already knew by heart. The clause sat there, plain and unemotional, waiting. A few feet away, someone stopped laughing. Another phone buzzed. I lifted mine to my ear. "The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revengeaita, while inspired by real corporate environments, power imbalances, and emotional truths professionals often face. All characters, companies, and events are fictional. This narrative explores dignity, accountability, and the consequences of underestimating the wrong person." "Dana," I murmured into the phone, eyes still on Blake as his confidence began to falter. "We have a public breach, cameras, witnesses, counterparty family involved." A pause, then a single question on the other end. I didn't hesitate. "Proceed?" "Around us." The room began to shift, though no one understood why yet. Blake's smile faded as he noticed the sudden quiet. The way attention was no longer on me but on the screens lighting up in people's hands. Why do powerful people always confuse silence with submission? I felt it before I heard it, the subtle shift. The way the room leaned away from me as if humiliation were contagious. Conversations resumed in fragments, just loud enough to carry. "She's lucky to even be here. Probably a placeholder. They'll swap her out by morning." None of them bothered to lower their voices. They didn't think they had to. Blake drifted closer again, emboldened by the lack of resistance. The stain on my dress seemed to amuse him. "You're taking this well," he remarked, eyes scanning the onlookers. "Most people would be mortified." "I don't embarrass easily," I replied. That earned a smirk. "That's good. This world can be rough on people who don't belong." Behind him, Martin Kessler stood rigid, jaw tight, already calculating damage control. Evelyn Kessler whispered something to a board member, her gaze cutting briefly in my direction before sliding past me, as if I were already irrelevant. They were all making the same mistake. Nina shifted closer, her voice low. "They think you're going to let it go." "I know," I murmured. My phone vibrated once in my hand, not a message, just a reminder. I ignored it and opened the contract instead. Scrolling past pages no one ever quoted at parties like this. Revenue projections, governance language, then the section everyone treated as decoration, reputation, and conduct. I read it again, slowly. Public behavior, family representatives, material harm, immediate remedies. Blake laughed at something over my shoulder. "Relax," he tossed out, not even looking at me now. "This isn't a boardroom." "That's where you're wrong," I answered. He turned, frowning. What was that? I didn't repeat myself. I kept reading. Not one signature from the Kessler side acknowledged this clause with anything more than a cursory initial. No amendments, no carve-outs. Confidence had made them careless. Across the room, another phone buzzed, then another. Martin straightened. Evelyn stopped whispering. Nina leaned in, barely containing a smile. They still don't see it. I locked my screen and slipped the phone back into my palm. They will. The noise around us continued, unaware that something essential had already shifted. Who do you call when you don't need permission? I stepped away from the circle just enough to breathe. Not enough to disappear. That mattered. Blake watched me go with a crooked smile, already turning his attention elsewhere, certain the moment had passed. It hadn't. I raised the phone to my ear while the room pretended not to stare. Dana, I said, keeping my voice level. I need you listening, not reacting. On the other end, a pause. Then focus. Dana Cho didn't waste words. She never had. Go on. Public incident. I continued. Founder's son, deliberate act. Cameras everywhere. Witnesses include board members and press. Another pause, shorter this time. Counterparty family involvement confirmed. Yes, any attempt to de-escalate. They laughed. That was enough. I heard fingers moving, keys tapped, a mind already mapping consequences. The clause applies, Dana replied. Reputation and conduct. Immediate review authority is yours. I'm aware. Silence stretched. Not uncertainty. Alignment. Do you want a hold, she asked, or a full freeze? I looked up. Blake was mid-story now, glass refilled, confidence restored. Martin Kessler stood a few feet away, pretending to scan the room while watching me from the corner of his eye. Evelyn Kessler had gone still, like a chess player sensing a mistake too late. Freeze, I said. Authorization and release. A breath on the line. Then resolve. Done. I'm notifying compliance and finance. Wire stops tonight. Good. Claire, Dana added. Softer now. Once this goes out, there's no quiet reversal. I know. I ended the call and slipped the phone back into my hand without looking at it. Around me, conversations stumbled. Someone laughed too late. Another voice trailed off mid-sentence. Nina appeared at my side, eyes sharp. What did you do? I followed procedure. Across the room, a phone buzzed. Then another. Martin straightened abruptly. Evelyn turned toward him, lips parting, her question unspoken. Blake noticed the shift last. His smile faltered, just slightly, as the noise thinned and attention drifted not toward him, but toward the screens lighting up in people's hands. How fast can confidence turn into fear? The first phone vibrated near the bar, then another, closer. A ripple followed, subtle, unmistakable, until the sound stitched its way across the room. Conversation stumbled, laughter arrived a beat too late and died where it landed. Nina angled her screen toward me without a word. The subject line glowed stark and precise. Deal status, suspended, immediate review. No flourish, no apology. Across the room, Martin Kessler's posture changed. He stopped pretending to mingle and stared at his phone as if it had betrayed him. His jaw tightened. The smile he wore for donors didn't fit anymore. He looked up and caught Evelyn Kessler's eye. What is this? Evelyn's voice cut through the din, low but commanding. People nearby went still. Martin leaned in, shielding his screen. It can't be right. We didn't authorize. Evelyn straightened, chin lifting. Then find out who did. Blake laughed again. Too loud, too quick. Everyone relax. It's a glitch. He raised his glass toward a cluster of guests. These things happen when compliance gets bored. No one laughed back. A board member stepped away from him, eyes flicking between Blake and the subject line, repeating on screens around the room. Another guest murmured something into a phone and walked off. Already disengaging, Blake noticed the distance last. Hey, he snapped, trying to reclaim the moment. You're overreacting. I didn't move. That was the point. Standing still kept me visible, kept the center from sliding back to him. Martin crossed the space toward me, careful now, measured. Claire, he began, voice lowered. Let's talk privately. I held his gaze. There's nothing private about a public breach. Evelyn joined him, eyes sharp. You're suggesting a suspension over a party incident. I nodded once. I'm acknowledging the trigger. Behind her, Blake's grin thinned. He checked his phone again, Then again. Confusion seeping in where certainty had been. The room had shifted its weight, and he felt it attention no longer following him, but gathering around the quiet certainty he couldn't interrupt. I stayed where I was as the murmurs turned into questions, and the questions into distance. The crack had opened. The room was choosing sides. Who actually runs a family empire when everything is at risk? Martin reached me first. He moved with the calm of someone trained to smooth edges, hands open, voice low enough to suggest reason. Claire, let's step aside. We can clear this up without an audience. I stayed where I was. The audience is the issue. Evelyn arrived a heartbeat later, presence tightening the air. She didn't look at me at first, her attention fixed on Martin. This is spiraling. Fix it. Then her eyes cut to me. You're escalating a misunderstanding. Blake pushed between them, impatience cracking through his grin. This is ridiculous. You can't freeze a deal over a spill. He gestured at my dress. That's not governance. That's theater. Theater is when nothing changes, I replied. This did. Martin exhaled, choosing his words. You know the scale of what's at stake. $1.8 billion doesn't pause because someone had a bad moment. It pauses because your representative created a public breach, I said. Documented, witnessed. At a sanctioned event. Evelyn's jaw set. We don't accept unilateral moves. I didn't make one, I answered. The structure did, Blake scoffed. You're hiding behind fine print. I'm standing on it. Martin's eyes flicked to Evelyn, then back to me. What do you want? I didn't hesitate. Accountability. For a glass of wine, Blake snapped. For conduct? I said. Evenly. For pattern. For risk. Evelyn stepped closer. Voice firm now. Practiced. You're not canceling this deal. I'm not, I agreed. The controls are. A murmur rippled nearby. A board member leaned away from Blake. Another guest lowered their phone. Already done listening. Blake's confidence cracked. You think you're in charge here? I think the authorization speaks for itself. Silence followed. Thick and undeniable. Martin swallowed, understanding settling in. Evelyn's gaze hardened, recalculating. Blake looked around for allies and found distance instead. I felt the shift complete, not loud, not dramatic. Just rules doing what rules were built to do. Why do powerful people always minimize the moment they cross the line? Evelyn broke the silence first. Her tone softened, the way it did when she wanted control back without appearing to take it. Let's be precise, she said. This is an optics issue, nothing more. Optics are the issue, I replied. They're the measure. She tilted her head, studying me. You're turning a social misstep into a governance crisis. I'm recognizing one, Blake snapped before she could continue. This is insane. His voice rose, sharp with disbelief. You're blowing this out of proportion because you were embarrassed. A few people flinched, others leaned in. I wasn't embarrassed, I answered. I was informed. Informed of what he spread his hands, daring me. That you don't belong here, I didn't rush the response. I didn't need to. That your family treats risk like a joke. Martin shifted his weight, a warning glance cutting toward Blake. It was too late. You don't get to lecture us, Blake continued. You're not even the final authorization, I said calmly, for the release. The words landed, not loudly, cleanly. Evelyn's expression tightened. That authority exists within partnership. It exists within controls, I replied. And those controls are active. Nina stepped closer and angled her tablet toward me. Headlines stacked one after another, still updating. Industry alerts. Analyst pings. The clip, already trimmed, already spreading. Evelyn saw it. Martin saw it. Blake didn't want to. This doesn't have to leave this room, Evelyn said. It already has. Blake looked around, searching faces for reassurance. He found distance, phones down, eyes away. The room was no longer his. Martin spoke carefully. If we address this publicly, the address is the problem, I said. Public behavior triggered a public response. Evelyn exhaled through her nose, patience thinning. You're enjoying this, I shook my head. I'm finishing it. Another alert chimed. Nina's screen refreshed. Martin closed his eyes for a moment, recalculating in real time. Blake's voice dropped, finally uncertain. You can't let this define us. I met his gaze. You already did. How do you contain a disaster once the world is watching? The first clip surfaced before the servers finished syncing. Nina didn't have to explain, she simply turned the tablet toward me. Blake's laugh. The tilt of the glass. The red streak across my dress. Someone had already added captions. Someone else had slowed it down. Phones rang with a different urgency now. Analysts didn't ask what happened. They asked what it meant. Words like governance and control appeared in messages that had never included my name before. A ripple cut through the room as a path opened. Richard Kessler moved with the authority of ownership, measured, unhurried, practiced. He stopped a step too close, eyes sharp but voice restrained. Claire, he began, as if we were old acquaintances. This has gone far enough. I held his gaze. It went exactly far enough. He glanced at the screens around us, then back to me. We can fix this. A statement, a restructuring, whatever you need. Martin stood just behind him, silent now. Evelyn watched without blinking. Blake hovered at the edge, suddenly small. I'm listening, Richard continued. Influence, access, compensation. He named a figure that would have quieted many rooms. It's not a pricing issue, I replied. He leaned in, lowering his voice. Everything is a pricing issue, not this. The room thinned. People pretended to check messages while waiting for my answer to become theirs. We'll make it right, Richard pressed. Privately. It wasn't private. His jaw tightened. You're choosing escalation. I'm choosing boundaries. A notification chimed another outlet, another analyst note. Nina didn't look up this time. She didn't need to. Richard straightened, the calculation finishing behind his eyes. You're leaving us no room. I didn't take it. I said, you gave it away. Silence settled, heavier than before. Richard stepped back, nodding once not agreement, but acknowledgement. The offer was withdrawn without ceremony. Around us, the room adjusted to a new reality. The story had escaped. And nothing inside these walls could pull it back. What does a $1.8 billion decision sound like? It sounded like a phone vibrating once in my hand. Nina leaned in, already reading the confirmation before I opened it. Heartbridge Capital has issued the termination, she murmured. Full language, no ambiguity. I scrolled. The words were exact, cold, irreversible. Due to a verified breach of reputational and conduct standards. Heartbridge Capital hereby terminates its participation. No adjectives, no emotion, just consequence. Across the room, Martin's phone rang. He answered it, listened for less than 10 seconds. Then lowered it slowly, the color drained from his face. Trading just reacted. He said to no one in particular, we're down. Evelyn closed her eyes, once. When she opened them, the calculation was gone. This wasn't a messaging problem anymore. Blake lunged toward his father. You can't let this happen. Richard didn't look at him. Step back. That's it, Blake's voice cracked. You're just letting her. Richard turned then, sharp and final. You did this. Blake froze. An assistant approached quietly, voice low but firm. The board has requested you suspend all observer access, effective immediately. Blake stared. You can't be serious. The assistant didn't answer. He didn't have to. Around us, guests drifted away in small groups, already rewriting their alliances. Phones stayed out, messages flew. A family portrait that had taken decades to polish was fracturing in real time. Martin cleared his throat. We'll issue a statement. You will. I agreed. It won't change the outcome. Evelyn looked at me then, something brittle in her expression. You could have handled this differently. I did, I replied. I handled it correctly. Nina touched my arm. Car's ready. I nodded and stepped away as the room reorganized itself without me. No one followed. No one tried to stop me. Behind us, the deal finished dying quietly, precisely exactly the way it had been built to end. Who really pays when arrogance goes unchecked? The calls started before dawn. I let them ring. By the time the sun reached my window, the story had already chosen its angle. Governance failure, one headline read. Another used the word pattern. The footage of Blake's laugh looped beside screenshots of Heartbridge's termination notice. No commentary from me. None was needed. Nina skimmed the morning briefings at the kitchen counter. 3 funds pulled back from Kessler Group overnight, she said. 2 more are reviewing exposure. Expected, I replied. She hesitated. They're asking for you. Networks, industry panels, even the Senate subcommittee's office left a message. Decline, I said, all of it. By mid-morning, Martin Kessler's name appeared beside phrases like internal review and temporary restructuring. Evelyn's statements grew shorter, more defensive. Richard's didn't appear at all. Hartbridge's inbox told a different story. Requests for meetings, invitations that used to take months now arrived with suggested times. Dana forwarded one message with a single line beneath it. This is what credibility looks like. Blake's name stopped appearing. His accounts went quiet. A contact at another firm texted Nina board observer privileges revoked. He's done. That evening, my phone buzzed once more. A number I recognized. One I didn't save. You didn't have to erase him, Martin's voice said, hoarse. I didn't, I replied. The structure did. Silence stretched between us, heavy and honest. This will follow us, he said finally. It should. After the call ended, I stood by the window, watching the city move on without noticing me at all. That was fine. The point had never been visibility. It had been clarity. Nina set her tablet down. They're still trying to understand how it happened. I allowed myself a small exhale. They'll spend years doing that, outside. Traffic surged, indifferent. The noise of the night before had faded into record, precedent, consequence. And somewhere in that quiet, the lesson settled unalterable, already in motion. What does silence mean when you're no longer afraid of losing? The car pulled away from Manhattan without ceremony. Nina sat beside me, quiet now, the work done. Streetlights slid across the window, then fell behind us. My phone vibrated once. It's done. Dana's message needed nothing else. Nina glanced over. Termination confirmed. Confirmed. I answered. She nodded, relief passing through her shoulders. They'll keep trying to reframe it. They always do. The city thinned into distance. I felt lighter than I expected, not triumphant, not relieved, clear. That surprised me. I had imagined anger would linger, or satisfaction would spike. Neither came. Nina broke the quiet. They're calling it revenge. I smiled faintly. That word helps them avoid responsibility. You don't see it that way. No. I looked out the window. Revenge needs an audience. This needed a boundary. My phone buzzed again. A forwarded note from compliance, brief and formal, no further action required. Controls functioned as designed. I locked the screen. Nina hesitated, then asked, "Do you regret not saying more?" At the end I said what mattered, I replied. The rest would have been noise. She considered that. You never raised your voice. I didn't need to. The driver merged onto the highway. The city receded, indifferent, intact. Somewhere behind us, lawyers would argue language, boards would reshuffle, statements would soften. None of that touched what had already been said. I thought of Blake's laugh, of the glass tilting, of how certain he'd been that silence meant surrender. I hadn't corrected him then. I had let the structure do it later. Nina leaned back, finally at ease. So that's it. When the car slowed near my building, I gathered my coat and paused before stepping out. The night air was cool, steady. For the first time since the gala, I felt finished. Silence is not the absence of power. It is the discipline to act without spectacle, the courage to enforce boundaries without apology, and the wisdom to let systems speak when words would only dilute the truth.